Once again, good morning. I still Daybreak Africa Features team with you from studios and on to city. Of course, I'm Ezekiel. Okay, this morning we'll be talking on brain drain, particularly how it affects our health sector in Nigeria. Now, new reports put percentage of professionals willing to leave Nigeria at 52%, which is quite a number. A new survey carried out by Philips Consulting has indicated that over half of Nigerian professionals are considering leaving their current job and moving abroad. Now, UK and US are the top two destinations for Nigerian medical doctors to seek work opportunities, with 93% and 83% respectively. The country's healthcare indicators are considered some of the worst in Africa. It has one of the fastest growing population globally, with 5.5 live births per woman and a population growth rate of 3.2% annually. It is estimated to reach 400 million people by 2050. Medical professionals are in short supply, with only about 35,000 doctors, despite needing 237,000 according to World Health Organization figures, partially due to the massive migration of healthcare workers overseas. Now, look for us this morning. We have a medical doctor in the house, person of Stephen Ayodele. Welcome on Daybreak Africa.
Thank you for joining us this morning.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Stephen Ayodele Adewole.
Okay.
That's my name, not just Stephen Ayodele. But having said that, it's nice to be here, and I'm glad to be part of this program this morning.
Thank you for joining us. Well, going straight to today's business, Nigeria has plans to launch a workforce plan to discourage brain drain in the country, and this happens to be in the area of health sector. But before we dive into the whole discuss proper, how would you describe the transition of the health sector from time till now?
Thank you very much. What I will start by saying is that, well, I don't want to agree fully with some of the statistics I heard earlier on in the program, simply because if we have up to 35,000 doctors in the country, none of us will complain. That is the first thing I want to say. I happen to be an official of the Medical and Dental Consultants Association of Nigeria for Ondo State, the secretary to be precise. So a lot of information passed through my table almost on a daily basis. As at the moment, we have just about 17,000 doctors in the whole country. When I say 17,000, I mean as at the moment. Maybe by the end of the month, it might have dropped to 16,000. So what we are trying to say is that there is, in actual fact, an emergency situation in our hands, because the doctors are leaving in droves. In the teaching hospital where I work, I'm fully aware of about 11 doctors who would likely leave by the end of this month. And that is in my teaching hospital alone, that I am aware. I may not be aware of all of them. And just like you said, the number of people that are living in droves to other countries, not necessarily better countries, I want to emphasize that, not necessarily better countries, but countries where they think there is some guarantee of security for them and their children. And when I say security, I'm not talking of physical security, but what we call job security, because there's a difference between just having security of life and job security. Most countries that they go to are not necessarily safer countries than Nigeria. The UK, for example, a lot of blacks are being molested, are being killed, and there are no news reports of them, but we get to hear some of those information, maybe partly because of our position, or secondly, partly because some of us are also widely traveled, okay? I do travel out a lot as well. And I've gone to US, I've gone to Europe, I've gone to a lot of countries, and I've seen how things happen there. You are not actually, life is actually not necessarily better in those countries, but there is some job security, and that's what I will try to explain. You are guaranteed that at the end of the month you'll be paid. no matter how small, you know you'll be paid. You are equally guaranteed of regular power supply. We may not know the gravity of this issue of power supply, right, until when you are an entrepreneur, when you own a business, and you cannot tell when next you have regular electricity. It gives a lot of us a lot of worries, because energy consumption, when there is no steady source of power supply from the national grid, constitute a lot of drain in your economy as an entrepreneur. Like this studio, it will interest you if you sit down with the accountant of this organization. If he tells you how much you are consuming on diesel every month, you wonder how. However, there are countries where there is regular power supply, and if you look at the total cost in energy at the end of the day, it's much less than if you are the one generating the energy. So when people have that understanding that if there are some places you go to where you know that there will be regular power supply, the roads are well tarred, so you don't have to keep on maintaining your vehicle every now and then. Your children, when they go to school, at times they are through with their studies. No matter how bad, they know there will be a job. It might not be commensurate with their study, but they know that they are not going to stay at home and still be left to be depending on their parents. Those are the things that are driving people out of the country. Now, coming to Nigeria and coming to the issue of healthcare, this issue of brain drain has been on in the past. This is not the first time it's happening. Okay, some of us are at least were old enough to know 1982 till 1992. There was a massive brain drain of health workers in this country at that time as well. Okay, you only need to do a little bit of Google search and this information will be right there before you. It also happened in 1982 to 1992, and it is the same scenario when people are no longer having enough confidence in the ruling, administration. When the government of the day, you cannot really point in any clear direction as to, okay, what are these guys trying to offer us? See people moving out. Also added to that is the poor situation of the naira when it comes to exchange. As at 1982, before then, one naira was, in fact, the naira was more powerful than the dollar until 1982. It will interest you to know that as at 1981, one naira was equivalent to $2. In fact, it got to a stage, the naira and the dollar were at par. And then a pound was equal to $2. That's why I will say it in Yoruba. If you hear those very old women traders in the market, if they say, give me ponkon, ponkon just means 1 pound. 1 pound is 2 naira. And that was what it was at that time. But by the time we got to 1983, 1984, of course, we all know who was in power then. Suddenly, $1 became 10 naira. And that's 10 times or almost 20 times, rate of change was like a big hit to most people. And they felt, wow, they can't continue at this rate. So people started emigrating to other countries. Doctors, especially, of course, nurses and other health workers inclusive. So the brain drain happened then. But majority of those people that left then returned. That's one thing I need to state. A lot of them by 1993, they came back. And you may need to start asking them why. A lot of them had a lot of stories to tell. Topmost among the list is racism. Because no matter how well paid you are going to do your own work plus the work of so many other people when you go out there. Meanwhile, those people are equally going to be better paid than you are. And then you are now left in a situation whereby you are the one doing all the work, no time to rest, just simply because you are not a first-class citizen in those countries. So I want that perspective to be very clear. Now, coming down to the issue of the this law trying to discourage doctors from leaving the country.
But before we get into that,
Yeah.
speech, I mean, it's quite elaborate on that. I tend to wonder now, the alarming part was when WHO stated we have 35,000, and getting first-hand information from you, we are even less than that.
We are not up to 17,000.
We still have some leaving already. So I tend
we are
to wonder,
not up to 17,000. In fact, that 7,000 is even an estimate.
Wow. What's your take on the medical infrastructure or level of government budget allocation into this sector?
You see, the number one problem with the administration in Nigeria is that the amount we budget for healthcare is too small. And I say that with all sense of seriousness. I was in Roswell Park in New York 2019. The budget of Roswell Park is a cancer center, okay? Is a mainly for the treatment of all forms of cancers, okay? Gynecological cancer, neurological cancer, endocrine cancer, whatever form of cancer. That is all that hospital is meant for. Their budget alone is more than the budget of 20 teaching hospitals in this country. So you can imagine, medical equipment are perhaps the most expensive equipment for any professional in any nation. Leave out the military. By the time you remove the military, the next most expensive professional with the costliest equipment is medical equipment. By the time you are budgeting, you have an equipment that will go for about 100 million naira. And then the government is saying they are only budgeting 20 million naira to that same hospital for a whole month. Meanwhile, to purchase one equipment is 100 million. How do you expect that hospital to function? Okay, so that is where the problem is. The budgeting for healthcare is abysmally low. It will interest you to note that Botswana, a country of less than 5 million people, have a percentage budget from their normal yearly budget that is voted for healthcare at 35%. So if they budget 1 billion naira, I'm just giving an hypothetical example, as the whole budget for the whole nation for that year, 350 million will go to healthcare. So how will you expect them not to do well in terms of healthcare? Of course, you don't expect the managers of those tertiary institutions, those secondary institutions, to manufacture equipment from the air. Unfortunately, we are not a manufacturing nation. So we don't manufacture any of our medical equipment. We import them. And then you are now contending with the falling value of the naira and then the low budgeting. So you go to most of our healthcare centers, you end up with seeing obsolete equipment. You end up seeing even the surgical instrument that we use in the theater, like the one we have in our own center, was bought about 10 years ago. So a lot of them are no longer as effective as it used to be. And then you have doctors who have all the knowledge but nothing to work with. So it's not everyone that is like me, for example, that I would say, well, let's continue to persevere. We all have one life to live. For information, nobody is going to live two lives. So at the end of the day, you see the doctors, they will say, well, the one life I have, let me go and practice what I know. And the only place where they can do that is abroad. It's in most of those countries, the US, Canada. It will interest to know that the UK, the immigration to the UK is essentially like a transit immigration. Most doctors that go to the UK only go and spend 1, 2, 3 years there. They eventually leave UK to go to Canada. Canada, most of the time, is their final destination. I hope you get what I'm saying. So that's just the truth. The budgeting is poor. We get to our hospitals, the hospitals lack equipment. You don't, in fact, if any of us mention some equipment, like I am an oncologist, most of my oncology equipment, we don't have it.
So how do you manage to go about your activities?
We use the old-fashioned methods to do most of our surgeries. There was a time I was asked to reel out what I would need to have an effective oncology unit in my teaching hospital. And I mentioned Da Vinci robots. Now, a Da Vinci robot goes for $2 million US.
Wow.
That's almost 1.6 billion naira. How much is the yearly budget for my teaching hospital? Meanwhile, with a Da Vinci robot, I will not only be able to do some surgeries that ordinarily should take me about 5 hours in less than 30 minutes. Our center will become a reference center because others will come and learn how to use the robot because I've been trained on how to use it. It's like playing video game, but of course with a lot of finesse to it. But unfortunately, you cannot boast of a single Da Vinci robot in the whole of West Africa. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yes.
So that is the scenario we have in Nigeria, and unfortunately, unless this issue is addressed, because I keep telling some people, the amount of money we vote even for elections, which at the end of the day, everything will now go upside down. Can't we just devote like a tenth of it to healthcare? Last election costed the country almost 300 billion naira. And so many people are not satisfied with the outcome. How much does this cost to upgrade our healthcare system? How much is the budget for the Ministry of Health in 2023? You understand what I'm saying? So we need a lot of reorientation because no matter what the law is, you cannot tie people down. You cannot say that I cannot travel out of the country. If you don't want me to travel to the UK, I'll go to Ghana. And I will leave from Ghana to the UK. After all, you will not stop the Ghanaian authorities from allowing me to leave. You understand? So the best thing is make the home front conducive. People will stay back. It's like marriage. If the home front is conducive, nobody will be thinking of divorce. So that is just the simple truth I need to just say. Thank you.
What do you think about the plan actually? What was your reaction when you heard about it?
Of course, the plan is already dead on arrival because number one, I remember there's one legislature brought up the bill on the floor of the House of Rep, and then like a swift, it passed the first reading, and then we all got to hear about it. And I can tell you the catalog of petitions written against that bill already made the bill to be shut down. You can hear, I'm sure that you are aware that nobody is talking about the bill again. So if anybody is mentioning it, it's just a side talk, it's just a beer parlor talk, because the truth is that it's dead on arrival. Such a bill will never get to the level of public hearing. It won't go past public hearing because it won't scale it. You can't stop doctors. I mean, somebody who spent tens of millions of naira to train to become a doctor, who not only the family, the whole community is depending on him for returns. Perhaps maybe they went to collect loan for him to get educated. You are not telling him to stay back and collect peanuts as his salary. I mean, it's not possible. I mean, when your neighboring country are paying up to twice what you are earning, I mean, even if you are a doctor, will you stay back? It's as simple as that. Will you stay back? You are earning 500,000 per month in Nigeria, and then just a walk across to the next country, somebody ready to offer you 2 million naira. Will you stay back? That is just the simple truth. And like I said, the naira that is depreciating almost day by day is not helping matters. And it's because of all these poor policies. It's poor politics, because at the end of the day, if efforts are made to make the naira stronger, I don't see any sense in living to the UK where somebody will say I should go and be earning £1,000 per month. Meanwhile, £1,000 per month is almost 2 million naira. Do you understand what I'm saying? So naturally, and I will look at my age. Okay, for example, I'm just 35. If I'm earning 2 million naira per month for the next 35 years, that's the way my colleagues are thinking. Because by the time you are 60, you're not likely going to be productive as you are now. And then who will say, let us continue to wait until we get to the age of 60. Maybe Nigeria will be better. So the average person that is less than 30 years old amongst our colleagues, they are living. Some of us are not, maybe because we are too old to live, but those who are younger, they are living. They don't have any responsibility. They don't have a wife. They don't have a house. They don't have any major, assignments to fall back on. So they end up living. And that's just the truth.
If we tend to continue like this, what do you think will be the future of the health sector?
The future is that very soon it is all these herbalists that will be left to take care of Nigerians. It will be herbalists, those that will have to consult the IFA to check the diagnosis. Those will be the people that will be left. Because the truth is that something has to give. It's not about making a law. No matter how much law you make, we are in an international society now. You can't stop me from getting to know how much somebody else is ready to offer me somewhere. And medicine is a professional job. It's like artisanship. If I'm a mechanic now and I'm living in Ondo State, for example, and I discover that in the FCT, my job is equally needed and people are ready to pay ×3 what I'm earning here, of course, you should expect me to go and look for money to find a way to transport myself to the FCT. And when I get to the FCT, worst case scenario, I'll be sleeping under the bridge. Maybe for the first 3 months, later I will have enough money to rent a house in Abuja, and life goes on. And that is the scenario. When I was in New York 2019, there were some of my colleagues that have left about 4 years earlier that are Uber drivers. I will say it again. Some of my colleagues that left much earlier that are Uber drivers in New York. But at the end of the day, to them, they can't come back. God, it will be like an anticlimax. But they are ready to just push on until things get better. And that is exactly what is happening all over the world. But the question is, why are we being pushed to the extent that doctors have to leave? And it's all about policies. I gave an example. I was invited to a similar forum like this, even though it was a larger forum. There were other panelists, and I made it clear. If the federal government increased the salary of doctors today to ordinary 1.5 million per month, no doctor will leave. I made it clear, because by the time you look at it, 1.5 million, if I'm going to leave to earn 2 million, that's just 500,000. What about the risks? And don't be deceived, our tax system in Nigeria is still very poor, whether we agree or not. It's not just enough that people are not collecting the tax, but it's even very poor. You earn £1,000 in the UK, for example. By the time you are getting your take-home pay, it might not be more than £300. That means close to £700 will be paid out to tax, which you cannot evade. But people evade tax in Nigeria. So whether we like it or not, Nigeria is still more convenient. Let me also shock you. Communication, internet is subsidized in Nigeria. It will interest you to know that. It is subsidized. When I was in New York, I was spending an average of $50 a week to surf the net, just to have my internet on. $50 every week. In Naira, how much is that? As at 2019, a dollar was 355 Naira. So if I'm spending close to 20,000 every week just because I want to keep my internet on, how much are we spending in a week? There are people who don't spend more than 100 naira a week on internet. In fact, there are some people, they wait until they see hotspots. That is the truth. Talk about energy too. Whether we like it or not, energy is equally subsidized. And we are lucky. There is no winter in Nigeria. So you don't need energy to keep your room warm. Otherwise, you die in your room. They will just wake up the next day and discover that your house is frozen. And you also froze with the house like a chicken. But that is not happening here. Our coldest weather is still conducive. So we don't need energy to keep our studios, our houses warm. But that is what happens in most of these countries that everybody is running to. So that is just the truth.
Now, I tend to wonder how exactly we would actually bring solutions to this problem, considering policies that has not exactly been passed. How best would do you think the government would actually
handle it?
Yes, it's straightforward. Now, the petroleum sector has been completely deregulated. What's my take? Beautiful idea. You cannot continue to subsidize petrol just to satisfy a few. Let everybody be on the same page. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. Many of us have started converting our generators to gas. We don't use petrol anymore. And we are moving on. And that is the beauty of this deregulation. If you used to like to travel everywhere before, now you have to watch it before you set out, because you know the cost. It's beautiful. But you see, there must be every effort to keep the naira afloat. Because as long as the value of the naira keeps falling, then the purchasing power of the average Nigeria will get worse. It will become more and more precarious. And as long as our purchasing power is not helping matters, people will emigrate. It's a simple thing. The CBN, in conjunction with the NNPC, with control of the government, can ensure that whatever transaction we are doing, it does not have to be dollarized. That was the magic that was working in the 80s. We don't used to export crude in dollars in the 80s. Go and check the records. We were exporting crude in naira. Anybody that wanted to buy our crude buys it in naira. And whenever you want to import, you equally import in naira, not in dollars. Because for as long as you are importing in dollars, you'll be making dollar to be stronger. Because the demand for the dollar will be very high if you import in dollars. But as long as you are importing in your own local currency, everything will normalize. And that was the step India just took. Less than 2 weeks ago, India imported all its crude in their local currency. So, of course, you that want to sell, if somebody says he's not going to buy in your own currency, that it has to be in his own currency, you have to sit down and negotiate. And when it is okay for the two of you, then the transaction will be done. And that is the way forward. Any other attempt is just going to be an exercise in futility, because you see there are some people who have a lot of millions of dollars stacked up in their houses, and they are only praying that the value of the naira continues to fall so that they will have more value with them at home. So we must do that. That is number one. I will say again, there must be effort by the government to increase workforce salary. Constitutionally, they are supposed to upgrade salaries every 5 years. That is what is in our Nigerian constitution. If they can do that, more people will have more reasons why they should just stay back than to go out, because it is not as easy out there. It's not. I can tell you that for a fact. The few times I've been out, my colleagues, when I see the way they are living, I don't wish myself to be in that situation. A lot of them do 3 jobs, 2 jobs. That means at the end of the day, no time to rest. And the human body is not a machine. Even machines wear out. That's my own take.
Thank you
very
so much for joining us this morning. It has been interesting so far, and we hope that the federal government take to these advices which you've already given and things turn out better than it is currently. Well, this is where we'll be ending this episode of Daybreak Africa. Thank you for joining us once again, and we'll be handing you over to our Lagos station that has a package prepared for you. Till we come your way again, I am Angela Daku.
Have a wonderful day. I remain Ezekiel. Okay.